we've learned how to quickly expand, quickly launch a new facility, and enable our people with the kind of technology required to be successful. And in the process, help our people to feel like they're really contributing to supporting the brand that they're working with in a way that doesn't make them feel like a robot.
The Industrial Sage Executive Series, sharing the stories behind game-changing executives, their organizations, and insights into today's industry challenges.
Well, hello and welcome to today's Industrial Sage Executive Series. I'm joined by Mike Willoughby, who is the CEO of PFS. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today on the Executive Series.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Dane. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm excited to jump into today's episode. So you're coming in from Dallas, Texas, not to be, and for those who are unfamiliar with the weather going on right now, we were talking about beforehand, you actually got snow going on there.
We do. It's unusual. This is Texas is not known for having a lot of snow events, but this is our second this year. We were actually talking earlier about the one we had last year, so we're definitely not getting a repeat of that. Thank goodness. Nobody wants to spend a week with spotty power and the kind of freeze that we had a year ago. So just some nice, pleasant snowflakes going on outside my window.
That sounds nice. Not not like what you guys had last year. So glad it's
definitely not.
And like we were talking about here, it's crazy because it's like 70 something degrees over here. Whatever you got's coming over here, so we'll see what happens.
Have fun with that.
Yeah, thank you. So, all right, for those who aren't familiar with PFS, what do you guys do?
Well, so PFS provides order fulfillment services, to put it simply. We provide for our clients a premium order fulfillment solution. So if you think about brands that care a lot about their unboxing experience, what it really means to get, say, a Chanel health and beauty product or a high-end luxury jewelry item, you're probably not expecting that to come in just a plain brown box with a bunch of air pillows around it. You're probably expecting that it's got some boutique caliber experience. We do that for our clients. It's a very non-Amazon kind of experience where you would equate that with if you're going to a boutique and you're going to shop that boutique, you're going to carry that package out. You're probably spending a decent amount for the product itself, and the experience that you're going to have when you actually receive that product yourself. If you're shopping in the store, you want to have as much of that as possible if you're going to receive that package, on your front door, delivered by a courier. So we provide a fulfillment experience across both the way that we manage the order as it comes into our systems, the way that we process payments, ultimately the way that we take the product out of our fulfillment centers, package it appropriately for each brand that we support, and then tender it to a carrier to get it to your doorstep, and then provide the customer service that goes along with that if you have a question about your product. And we want to do that in a way that reflects the brand, that we are not in the way of that at all. You're never going to see the words PFS on any kind of packaging, on an invoice, on your interaction with the customer service agent. Our intention is to be on brand and reflect the brand that we've been entrusted to support.
Excellent.
So that's what we do.
Oh, very cool. So yeah, very different than a traditional Amazon experience, where the experience is the big piece of value, right?
Right. Well, with Amazon, it's all about efficiency, and they do an amazing job of creating an efficient transaction. We want to be efficient, but at the same time, we want to create that exceptional experience. It's the mission of the company to provide exceptional experiences for our clients and their customers.
Very cool. Oh, excellent. Well, I'm excited to kind of get into that a little bit more because this sounds a little bit more unique than some of the other companies that we've been talking to, where it's all same sort of thing. I mean, you obviously got different packaging sizes and whatnot, but it sounds like this is very much different. So we'll get into that here in a second. But now is the section of the time where we get to know more about you. We want to learn more about Mike. So Mike, tell me, how did you get into this space? And take me back. Like, did you go to college for this? Did you, as a kid, said, this is what I want to do? Yeah. What was that?
Yeah, it's, I think probably like a lot of entrepreneurs, like a lot of business leaders, my journey is a bit of a winding journey. And I certainly didn't, I was sitting in my first grade class, think, oh, so supply chain, logistics, transportation, those things sound cool. I want to go do that. In fact, it wasn't until I was actually in college, my sophomore year, that I stumbled on technology as something that I really loved and that I had an aptitude for. And one of the things that I think we'll probably talk about is influencers. Who influenced you in your life. And I think about a professor who recognized something in me and said, you've got a real knack for technology. And we're talking about early 80s when I was in university. So, technology wasn't the kind of immersive, ubiquitous sort of experience that we all have today. But that's what got me started on the current journey that I'm on, is an aptitude for technology and for solving problems using technology. So I went and got my degree in information systems. I started my career with a consulting business that I started while I was in school. I really started that business out of necessity because I was in love with my girlfriend at the time and wanted to get married while I was still in school. And the only way that was going to happen is if we could, earn a living while we're actually trying to finish out our degrees. So I decided I better start a business and make some money. And I did that by, doing some work around the oil field, helping oil and gas businesses that were in the area of Texas where I went to school, and just put that sort of expertise to work and started to help people solve technical problems, doing some programming, doing systems administration, that sort of thing. And that small business grew into my first business that was all around sort of custom programming, consulting, that sort of thing. I sold that business to my partners in 1994 and started a software company that was oriented around commerce. We didn't call it e-commerce at the time. In fact, the software that we actually created was a CD-ROM based application where you put a catalog on a CD and shipped it out. And along with that, your pricing tables and everything went out for the specific customer. It was an early version of e-commerce, but it wasn't HTML and browsers. It was based on a CD and an application that we shipped. But a couple years after we started that company, it became obvious that the internet was going to take over providing content. Instead of getting a CD-ROM, you could actually just go to a browser and pull up the content. So we converted our application into an e-commerce application. And really the timing was perfect because it was the dot-com boom at the end of the 90s. And so one of my biggest customers was a company called Priority Fulfillment Services. We now refer to as PFS. And they were using my software to help their clients solve e-commerce problems in the late 90s. And we were so successful that the CEO of the company at the time came to me and offered to buy my company out in order to have access, exclusive access to the software that we were providing. And in 1999, it seemed like the perfect time to join a company whose focus was on e-commerce. And so that's what got me into logistics, is the application of technology to this e-commerce problem. And I guess the rest is history as far as PFS is concerned. The last 22 years have been, an amazing journey as we participated in dot-com boom and a lot of bleeding edge kind of things to what does it look like to have a mature model and to do e-commerce 22 years later when, it is, rapidly becoming the way that people want to interact with the brand.
I think it's a fascinating story. I have a couple of questions that I wanted to circle up on. I think it's very interesting about the, particularly around the dot-com, the 99 boom. But there was also not just the boom, there was also the bust, right? So we had a lot of failed dot-com companies that came in, and I'm curious. Did PFS? When did they start?
So Priority Fulfillment Services was actually started by a wholesale distributor called Daisy-Tech International in 1994.
Okay, all right.
And the purpose was to provide fulfillment services to the kind of clients that Daisy-Tech had, which are IBM, Hewlett-Packard, Dell, basically high-tech products and consumables. And so we provided fulfillment services, customer care, and order management back in the mid-90s. And as the company grew, as the subsidiary grew, we started to have brands approach us that had an idea to sell online, but had no clue how to actually deliver, a product that was sold online.
Yeah.
And so they're asking us to solve those problems around actually fulfilling orders that they were taking through their websites. And so we started to have, clients that had product categories that were way different than anything Daisy Tech had. We had investment bankers that were working with Daisy Tech who came to the parent company and said, we think this subsidiary that's doing $30 million a year is probably worth, 4 or 5 times as much as the parent company, which everybody thought was ridiculous. How's that even possible? But they were right. We did a spinoff of PFS in 1999. I joined shortly before the IPO. And they were right. This $30 million fulfillment services company that was not profitable had $1 billion market cap in early 2000. March 2000 happened 3 months later. And, just as quickly as we shot up, we shot down. But the thing that really sustained the company was the blue chip clients that we had, the folks like IBM and Dell and Hewlett Packard. They had the staying power where some of these .com booms and that became busts, were gone overnight. So we were really fortunate to have the blue chip clients that we had.
Yeah, that was my next question. I was curious. Hey, what was the secret sauce that kept you going? That's pretty interesting. Obviously you had those guys in your pocket and you were servicing them. That was helpful, obviously. So fascinating, actually. Really, really interesting stuff. I'm going to back up actually a second. You talked about how you started the company. I want to make sure I heard this right. You said the first company, were you in college when you started that? And you said, hey, the motivation was like, hey, I need to start a living. That is, I find that interesting because we're talking about, entrepreneurship there, right? Is that something that you were predisposed to? Did you come from a family of entrepreneurs? Like, what did that look like?
Well, so I didn't necessarily come from a family of entrepreneurs. I came from a family of people who felt like it was important to stand on your own 2 feet, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So my grandparents were farmers and ranchers. My father grew up in kind of the oil field while he had a technology-oriented job. It's very much an industry, and where I grew up in West Texas is a place that sort of inspires doing what you can to support yourself and stand on your own 2 feet. And my parents encouraged me at a young age to try to provide for myself and in the things that I wanted to have. What are you going to do to kind of earn those things versus them being given to you? So paper route at an early age, worked in a restaurant bussing tables in order to afford my first car when I was 16. So that kind of work ethic, maybe you might describe it.
Sure.
Morphed into entrepreneurialism in college, where my giftedness sort of crossed with, the need to support a family, right? At least the two of us that were starting our family. And it just seemed like the obvious thing that here's a passion I have, here's a giftedness I have, here's problems that need to be solved. And I really love to solve those problems. So why not combine the thing I love with making some money? And
yeah.
So it just lit a spark. It lit an entrepreneurial spark that has served me well, not only in the 2 businesses that I started. In the second one, I ultimately sold to PFS to join this organization, but just thinking about how innovative this company has to be in order to thrive in such a dynamic industry. If you are a adrenaline junkie, like almost everybody who works at PFS is, this is a place that just feeds that because it's always changing. There's nothing ever status quo about this business. And if you're going to rely on status quo, you're going to quickly be out of business.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Those who don't innovate die. That's the so I think it's fascinating on the entrepreneurial standpoint that it wasn't something that you were predisposed to. And you mentioned work ethic. How did you decide to start your first? Well, you just, okay, all right, I have this problem, and all right, I need to do this. I need to make some money over here, and I wanted to be able to support a family, and hey, I've got some good skills here, and what was that decision like? Obviously, some opportunity presented itself, and you said, hey, I think I can, because not everybody just in college says, hey, I'm gonna go start this business. Let me go start doing that. What was that for you?
Yeah. Well, my story, I think, is probably going to be similar to a lot of people's story, which sometimes it's more important who you know than what you know. And
Yeah.
the way that I got started was, frankly, an influencer in my life. The department chair of the information systems department at Abilene Christian University, where I went, saw something in me, and he actually had a friend who was working, had an oil-based business in town. And he said, my friend needs help, and I think that you could help them. I know you know the programming language that he uses to run his systems, and he just needs a little bit of help. So can you go talk to him? So had lunch and talked about his problem and said, sure, I think I can help you. And I got in and made a change to a program. And anyway, he said, wow, really appreciate that. He paid me $500 for 2 days work, which I thought was amazing at the time. Like, wow, I'm going to get rich. But one thing led to another, right? And it was word of mouth that helping him solve that problem and some more problems that he had. Then he referred me to somebody else. And pretty soon I had, a business, right? So, it's part jumping on an opportunity, but it's also a part having somebody who is connecting you, with other people, or somebody who has a problem that can be solved and your talents can be put to work. So I am definitely not the kind of person who says, I'm a self-made man or pulled myself up by my bootstraps or anything like that. There's a lot of people who are helping along the way to get me to where I am today.
No, that's cool. I love hearing stories like that. I think it's fascinating. Actually reminds me. You're mentioning in the oil in Texas. There's a story that I heard recently, actually, of two college students in Houston. I believe they're in Houston, and they are doing Bitcoin mining. They've created this Bitcoin mining basically out of a shipping container. And they're deploying them on oil platforms because the natural gas that gets, when they're drilling for oil, I'm not super into oil. I don't understand all. But what I was told is that you hit some natural gas, they have to burn it off. And so these guys said, hey, wait a minute, let's turn that into some energy. We're burning it off, and I think they did like $4 million in Bitcoin mining or something this last year, and it's opening up this whole thing. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. How somebody would take an old world industry like oil and gas production and the most high-tech industry you can think of, Bitcoin mining, and somehow create some combination that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I've often looked at the flare on an oil platform and thought the same thing. Why are they wasting all of that natural gas just burning it off? Somebody saw the same thing and did something about it. So congrats to them.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a whole other conversation we could have, that, you have a cryptocurrency that is actually really expensive to produce. You're like, wait, what? Anyways, that's a whole other thing, right? But we could go into a big rabbit hole there, but I'll bring it back. So, okay, so really interesting story. Obviously you were talking about, a pretty big influence there in terms of getting things going. Somebody who said, hey, I see something in you, and you kind of take it and you've ran with it. And you guys were able to sell that first company and then the second company into PFS, from what I understand. And then you guys were able to navigate the whole .com bust issue. And then continue to innovate and grow from there. You said that you have to innovate, and that's constantly what you're doing there right now. What does that change look like over the last several years? I mean, that 99 to 22. Obviously, there's been a lot of change, even from 2019 to what. But then, obviously, we had a lot of change in the last 2 years. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating story, and I could take several hours to tell the whole story, but let me condense it for you. So this is what it looks like. Coming out of the .com boom, as I mentioned before, we had the benefit of blue chip clients that we were able to rely on when some of these other, fly by night, as it turns out, ideas came and went. But we also discovered, I would say around the 2004, 2005 timeframe, that we were really good at taking care of some complicated kind of order fulfillment problems. And we had some early clients that were asking us to do difficult things that you just didn't see in a typical third-party logistics kind of situation. And especially the fact that we were bringing technology to bear to solve problems. It wasn't just, will we put your stuff in a warehouse and we'll pick it and put it in a box and ship it. We were actually solving some pretty complicated technology problems. So we decided that it would be in our best interest and it would be a great commercial value to try to do as much as we possibly could around e-commerce and create what we called an end-to-end solution where we could take care of creating your website, designing your website, deploying your website on top of a platform, do all the order processing and the fulfillment. And that way, if you had a brand and you wanted to come to us and say, look, I want you to just take care of all of this stuff. I'm gonna do all of the advertising and manufacturing of this product, but then you take it and help me put up a website and sell and deliver and all these things. And so we built our company from 2005 to 2020 around this notion that we could help a client completely with their e-commerce problem. And we built the company that way. We built a professional services subsidiary called LiveArea that was built to design, deploy, help to manage the technology associated with selling online. And we're very successful doing that. But we also recognized that the trends that were happening in our industry, say 5 to 7 years ago, were driving clients to start to really look at best of breed solutions and have multiple partners in an ecosystem to help them out. And we started to run into headwinds associated with this bigger, diverse kind of strategy that we had. And we also recognized within our business that the better that we got at these professional services and at this kind of order fulfillment, the more different the two sides of the business became. And as we were looking at what investment we want to make and what innovation has to happen in the two parts of our business, we decided that we really wanted to take advantage of tailwinds in our industry and specialize. So we went from diversification to feeling like it was in our best interest to specialize in some areas where there really were some very strong tailwinds. So we sold the LiveArea business last year in a very successful transaction for $250 million. It was about a $90 million business, so that's 3 times revenue.
Congratulations, that's a great multiplier.
We pulled off a really good transaction for our shareholders. But what it allowed us to do was to really focus on the area where I feel that the most growth potential is. So one of the things that's happened over the past 2 years that you're aware of is that everybody really doubled down on e-commerce as the best way to deliver a product to a consumer when that consumer didn't want to get in their car and drive to a store or weren't able to get in a car and drive to a store because the stores were closed or they were locked down. And so we saw a massive increase in the growth of e-commerce just in a 1-year period as retailers by necessity pivoted to e-commerce and as consumers by necessity and then by choice pivoted to e-commerce. And we found ourselves where we have a premier order fulfillment company that has all the capabilities that we do with great technology and an amazing experience and an amazing set of clients to refer to and amazing tailwinds, right? So I feel like perfectly positioned to take advantage of this evolution in e-commerce and to drive a lot of growth from just the opportunity that we see. So expansion, diversity, and then coming back to really focusing on the thing that we think has the most potential to drive growth, which is this order fulfillment and just all the changes that are happening in our industry around how you actually get product to a consumer's hands in an amazing way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that quite the journey and the story there. And obviously there's a lot with technology and how things have changed over those periods of time to make it easier. And it's kind of funny when you were talking about it a little bit earlier, when you guys are a little bit more diversified, it made me think of Tim Ferriss and the whole 4-hour work week and the premise being drop shipping. And I remember that was a huge. It was still, it's still very big. And you see the evolution of Shopify and all these different things that are happening right now. The types of companies that you engage with, what do they look like in terms of size and volume? Is it you were mentioning some brands specifically before that were a lot more specialty brands. Is there a particular suite size company that you deal with?
Well, it's not necessarily a size from like a revenue perspective or something that what's going to be indicative of a really good relationship for us with a client in a true partnership is where that client really has a passion for the experience that the consumer is going to have, right? I mentioned earlier this unboxing experience. That's usually how it's expressed for us is what is it going to look like when that person receives their package and opens it up, in the way that the product is packaged, presented, potentially even the way that, an assortment might be put together. There's something about that experience that they care a lot about. And so what that does is it creates difficulty in how you actually fulfill an order, as compared to what you might see in a typical, sort of warehouse. You're having to gift wrap boxes. You're having to, personalize product. You're having to work to make sure that brand experience is, what the consumer is going to experience, just like if they were shopping in the boutique. So that's the common thread you're going to see through all of our clients, is that they're passionate about the experience, and they're looking for something that's differentiated compared to a typical just general merchandise retailer or Amazon, who I mentioned earlier, right? That could be across, product categories like, jewelry, especially luxury jewelry, accessories, luxury fashion, whether it's handbags, footwear, apparel items, but particularly the more sort of high-end luxury type brands. Our biggest product segment's health and beauty. So if you're going to buy a beauty product, you probably care about how it shows up. You probably want to have, some samples that come along for the ride that, invite you to experience the brand in a new and different way. You may even want to be able to choose the products that go into, the palette that you're going to receive. Those are all difficult fulfillment challenges. They're difficult order management challenges, right? You may want to pay with PayPal. You may want to pay with Apple Pay. You might want to pay with traditional credit card. So there's complexity around, how you manage the order from that perspective. But the biggest thing is going to be when it actually arrives on the customer's porch, that she's going to be able to have an amazing unboxing experience. And if there's any question whatsoever, she's able to get on the phone with a real person that's in her, cultural context that she can talk to, that say, look, I've got a question about this, and I know that you're going to relate to me, and you're going to relate to my product, you're going to relate to my experience, and you're going to be able to help me solve my problem. In the same way that if I was walking into a boutique, I expect the person behind the counter is going to be able to help me with that problem. So that's what we do. And if you look across our entire client portfolio, you're going to see that in every single client, that's their expectation for that kind of experience with their customer.
That sounds very cool. I like the, I like the value proposition and you're talking about the unboxing experience. So do you guys get involved in terms like from a design standpoint, or is it, okay, so it's, hey, this is what it needs to look like so we can create that feeling, and then here's how we're actually going to be able to deliver that experience and all the technical nuances there. That sounds like fun challenges. I totally see how you're saying it, that things are not the same because, it's not a set it and forget it, here's the template, here's A, B, C. It's A through Z plus whatever, right?
That's right.
That sounds super interesting. What as far as like industry like challenges that are going on, obviously, with the pandemic and everything, everyone, you were referencing a lot of customer changes and whatnot. How has that impacted you guys? I imagine it would impact you guys in a little bit different manner, maybe than those who are specifically pushing out the same boxes or same sort of sizes. I know I'm kind of generalizing here a little bit, but what was that impact for you?
Well, so I do believe that everybody experienced some of the same kind of things from the last 2 years. One of them being, how do you respond to completely unexpected scale, that happened for us in March through July of 2020, right? So we actually have a graph that shows what happened to our order volumes coming in from our clients, during that time period compared to the previous year, which was a typical year. And if you look at it, there's this mountain that happens in Q2 and early Q3 of 2020, where we saw, an exponential increase in orders coming into our platform from our clients because they were shifting all of their orders to their e-commerce platform when the stores were closed, right? So one of the things that happened across our industry was surprise scale. And, some providers, some retailers, some businesses were able to respond to that in a way that captured that demand, but many found themselves, at the mercy of that demand and disappointing clients, unable to fulfill orders, unable to respond to that unexpected increase. We built a company, as I said earlier, that is able to provide that kind of premium experience and scale the business, which it's pretty unique in my opinion. And the fact that we were able to turn that on at a moment's notice in March of 2020 and say, okay, here's unexpected demand, but we know how to do this. We do this every single year during the holiday season, and able to scale to that unexpected demand, I think is different than a lot of people. And even somebody like Amazon, who you would think would scale to, be able to scale at a moment's notice, you saw them saying, well, we're going to have to, not take certain product into our facilities. We're going to, prefer other types of product. We're going to, potentially put our finger on the scale, when it comes to which providers we're going to support and which ones we're not going to support, as an indication that they even had trouble scaling to that unexpected demand. And then I think more recently, one of the things that you've seen is, our industry is reliant on the human factor. You've got people that are working in facilities that help make things happen, that are doing, picking product and packing product and shipping products. And you've got not that we do this, but in our industry, you've got people driving trucks to deliver product to people's doorsteps. There are humans involved in the entire supply chain. And as labor has become constrained, as we've seen wages increase, you've seen a lot of business really struggle with how do you adapt to that very rapid change in the availability and the cost associated with the human factor. We've always had an automation philosophy that says, how do you help people be successful with automation versus coming in and trying to completely replace the human factor with automation. We feel like augmenting the workplace and our people with effective automation is the best way, because it's really impossible for a robot to package a Chanel package in the way that Chanel would want, right? And so you have to have, in my opinion, people that are surrounding this experience that you're creating, but you also want to help them to be as effective as they can. So our automation and our philosophy is that we want to own the most important automation where it's the most differentiating, was a key part of our ability to scale quickly and still provide that experience. And we've learned how to quickly expand, quickly launch a new facility, and enable our people with the kind of technology required to be successful. And in the process, help our people to feel like they're really contributing to supporting the brand that they're working with in a way that doesn't make them feel like a robot. They're not showing up to a facility and they're just see product going by and they're basically just acting like a robot. They're actually contributing to an experience that they can see and maybe even envision somebody's going to actually have when the box arrives on the doorstep. And I personally think it elevates the human factor, which is an important thing for us. We're not looking to replace people with robots. We're looking to, sort of help them be more successful with the right kind of automation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big, one of the really big talking points is, as a lot of companies we're looking at automation before then pandemic. It was we have to automate because the labor is simply not there for multiple reasons, right? And obviously now there's a lot of challenges with that. However, some of the stigma with it being that are these replacing people's jobs and whatnot. Actually, I read a very interesting survey that Accenture came out with when they were talking to specifically warehouse workers about their sentiments towards automation, robotics. What I found very interesting is that they reported that the 60% had a positive outlook on it, which I found interesting. And then, there was a 40% negative sentiment towards it. I thought that would have been higher, to be honest with you. But I think one of the really interesting things, and maybe you can expand on this a little bit. I'd be curious about your philosophy on this. But one of the negative areas was certainly I'm worried about losing my job. I think that's kind of a given. Number two, though, was concerns about training and being able to help onboard somebody who this is normally a very manual process, and I'm picking this, I'm doing whatever. But now I'm interacting with some type of automation, whether it's an AMR or some sort of robotic arm or what have you. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I think that the application of technology to the workplace has the same pros and cons, across a lot of different industries, and it's the same, the same factors are in place in a logistics facility, which is that when you can use technology and automation to help people be successful, when you can help to alleviate the negative aspects of their job, like anything that would require, that would create sort of repetitive stress injury. So where you're lifting heavy things, right? How can you help to somebody do their job when you can take away that necessity for them to lift a heavy object or transport it from one place to another, right? That's a job that, automation can do, and not only be more effective, but also to take that, danger away from somebody, right? You mentioned, sort of repetition. One of the things that is the most demoralizing about a job is, sort of meaningless repetition, where you're doing the same thing sort of over and over and over again,
Right.
In a way that you're not really adding value other than the fact that you're just accomplishing a task, right? So where that happens, you actually want to apply technology, because if you've got a human that's doing that same thing over and over and over again, it becomes demoralizing, and you're probably able to be more effective with some sort of automation. But you can also take the tasks that would otherwise be repetitive and actually provide a positive experience by adding gamification, for example, where if you're going to be picking products and putting it on a cart, you're able to see your statistics. You may get points for your productivity. The automation you're interacting with maybe feels like a video game. It's got sort of some, graphical kind of, experience that's more than just, pick a product and stick it in a box. So there's something about that process that actually, appeals to your creativity and to your desire to have a richer experience. If you can provide that at the same time that you're accomplishing the task, then it's a win-win, right? You've got people who say, I actually kind of enjoy this. It's like playing a video game. And I actually see how the more successful I am, that I can see that in my statistics right here on my little dashboard. And oh, by the way, somebody's able to come along and give me a pat on the back and say, wow, you did a great job today. And how does that maybe translate into value that I may be receiving? Even if it's as simple as, the kind of value you get from a video game when you collect a certain amount of points for, achieving an objective. So there are ways, as I said, gamification, just thinking about mixing it up, having people working on different clients and different products, not necessarily being always in the same exact spot. What's their upward mobility? How do they, traverse the organization and, move up and, take the skills that they've learned and apply that to a new situation? It's the same thing we all want. You're working in a workplace where you can apply your giftedness and you can be rewarded and you can take advantage of opportunities to manage your career. It's not any different from somebody who's working in an hourly job in a warehouse facility as it is working a corporate job in a marketing department.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great. I love it. I specifically on the gamification, really like that as well. We're seeing a lot of applications with that, and I think it's pretty cool. It's fascinating. So, sort of one last sort of industry question, and that's if you could, I'm going to ask you to take out your crystal ball and look into it a little bit, and where do you see the future of the industry going?
Well, one of the ways I think it's actually really easy, it doesn't take much of a crystal ball to predict, is inventory everywhere. So if you're going to be responsive to a modern consumer's expectations, you're going to deliver product, same day, next day. That's really the standard. Amazon has created that expectation. And if you're going to do that, you really have to have inventory that is, in a lot of locations. It needs to be really close to the consumer. So it's going to have to be in the region or in the metro area in order to satisfy that. That is a huge change for, anybody who's operating a fulfillment network, where you're thinking about, I'm going to have a multi-node network. I'm going to have a lot of smaller locations that are probably distributed. And for us, it looks like, how do you enable these kind of fulfillment experiences without necessarily having to always have the people in the buildings? So one of the things that we're working on is this idea that our clients are going to want to do some of these things themselves. And so how do we use our technology, our business processes, the knowledge that we have in creating these kind of experiences in our facilities, and help our clients to do that where it might make sense? For instance, turning a store stockroom into a little fulfillment location. So over the past 2 years, retailers have learned that they really need to think about their stores as inventory locations for curbside delivery, for local delivery, somebody who wants to order online, pick up in store, they want to get in and get out really fast. Well, to do that effectively, cost effectively, you need to be able to run the back room of a store as a little mini warehouse. How can we apply our technology and our knowledge to solve that problem? How could we put a small metro fulfillment location up for a client or for multiple clients where you're serving the Dallas Fort Worth area, or you're serving the Metro Atlanta area, or you're serving the Chicago metro area from a location where you've got inventory that's there. That's a change that Amazon sort of introduced on a massive scale. Retailers need to figure out how to replicate that same scale without all the investment and all the overhead. And I think we have something really unique to offer in that scenario. The second thing that I would point to is the sustainability and resilience aspect. We have to do this in a way that's sustainable. We have to figure out how to do these things in a way that is good for our planet and it's good for people. And taking mileage out of delivering a package is one way to do that, where you're not putting it on a truck and then on an airplane and then on a final delivery truck. So the closer you get your product to the consumer, the less carbon footprint you should have across that experience. But we also need to be thinking about how we can create resilience. You look at supply chain disruptions that happened last year. You look at the impact of the pandemic on just the whole industry and the supply chain. We've learned a lot about where we don't have resilience. And I think that there's an opportunity for us all to look at how do we create more resilient systems that are going to withstand some of these things that just happen unexpectedly, and do it in a sustainable way that's good for everybody on the planet. Which leads me to the third thing, which is stakeholder equity is going to be more and more important as we look to the future. How are we doing things in a way that creates win-win-win scenarios where you've got shareholders, you've got your employees, and you've got your customer and their customers, that you're taking into account all of their interests and needs, when you're designing a solution to a problem. So that looks like to me equity when you're thinking about your stakeholders in a business, not just your shareholders, but who all is relying on that business in order to make the world a better place. And I think that's going to drive more and more investment and focus for all of us. But when we think about our business, that's a traditional, maybe not as focused traditionally on sustainability and sort of stakeholder equity. How do we do the things that we're doing that drive for those objectives?
There you go. Awesome. No, I appreciate a lot of opportunities, a lot of challenges ahead to solve some of these issues and to really adjust to it. But I think what you guys are doing over there is pretty cool. You guys got some really interesting, very interesting value proposition. I imagine you guys have, I can imagine a lot of challenges in terms of how to fulfill orders that are very custom. Take that and still to do it, faster. I had that expectation of, you said next day, dare I say same day or 2-day delivery. That certainly is a big challenge. But listen, Mike, I really appreciate the time that you've spent with me and our audience here on Industrial Sage. I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed hearing your story. I think it's fascinating hearing these entrepreneurial spirits and where it came from, and you just solve problems, and it sounds like you're still really passionate about it, just a little bit,
Yeah,
and
I think you're right.
And so anyways, for those who'd like to learn more about you guys, I've got pfscommerce.com. They can go check you out there. And Mike, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Danny. Really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun over the last hour just to talk about all these things. So thanks for allowing me to share.
Oh, I appreciate it. And we'll schedule maybe 2 hours next time so we can keep going, because I had to hold myself back from getting into these rabbit holes, but I really enjoyed it. So
thanks, Daddy. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, that wraps up today's Industrial Sage Executive Series with Mike Willoughby, who's the CEO of PFS. You can check them out at pfscommerce.com. They got some fascinating technology and solutions, really interesting value proposition where I love talking about the unboxing experience and what that is. Obviously, it's very different than your traditional Amazon experience that you get with a package, And what I think is interesting, and I didn't bring this up in the episode, but I think I'm willing to bet you're going to see more of that as you remember. I remember certainly as a kid, getting boxes, getting shipments was like a big deal. because that didn't happen a whole lot. Now I look at my kids and I'm like, oh, it's another box, whatever. So I think that experience of actually unboxing and seeing things, I think it's going to become more of a thing. Hey, but that's my 2 cents. So, hey, thanks so much for watching. Listen, if you're not subscribed, I highly recommend go to industrialsage.com if you're not there right now and subscribe, because you're missing out on great episodes like this, great content. Great insights from guests like Mike, who was talking about solutions and insights and challenges that can help you in your business, whether it's in the same vertical or something different in the industrial space. You're missing out, so subscribe. All right, that's all I got for you today. I'll be back next week with another episode on Industrial Sage.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Get notified every time there's a new episode by signing up for our email newsletters. You can also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review so more industrial professionals can find us. Want us to tell your story? Go to industrialsage.com. This week's episode was produced by Rika Wiersma, filmed and edited by Optimum Productions, and our executive producer is Danny Gonzalez. Thank you for watching Industrial Sage.